Welcome to Change the World. My name is Guy Daunce, and this is the show where I like to invite people who are making a positive difference in the world, who don't look at the doom and gloom and say, "Oh my goodness." They say, "What can we do about this? How do we make the world as beautiful as we really want it to be?" So, my guest today comes all the way from England. It's Dr. Julian Abel, is a recently retired consultant in palliative care and a joint leader of the Frome project, which works to end loneliness and improve health in the small market town of Frome in Somerset by building community connections. I learned about Julian through the book he's just published called The Compassion, the Compassion Project, a case for hope and human kindness in the town that beat loneliness. So welcome, Julian.
Hello, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you for inviting me on the show.
It's great. Your book is not just about the power of compassion as a doctor in palliative care and how compassion can lead us to make wise decisions, but it's also about how a whole little market town has embraced this as an organizing principle to overcome loneliness. How did you get involved with what's happening in Frome?
Well, that's a great question. My involvement happened because I've been interested in compassionate communities and doing work in a whole variety of different places across the UK and then internationally as well for about a decade. And I was doing a project in the county of Somerset. Somerset's a county in the southwest of England of about 500,000 people, and the commissioning organisation said, "Oh, look, we put you in contact with Frome Medical Practice." Frome is a small market town of 28,000 people, and so I rang them up and we had a conversation, and we just realised we were doing the same thing and I'd been doing it in end of life care, and they've been doing it across the town of Frome and in general practice. So we just joined forces. It was like-minded people coming together.
So what? Talking to the viewer now, what you discover if you stay with us is that this little town of Frome, it's written Frome, Frome, but it's pronounced Frome, in Somerset, has put in place a system of community connectors or trained community connectors coming out of the general health practice. And by training community connectors to draw other people out and link them into services in the community, they have reduced the number of emergency visits by 45% compared to Somerset as a whole. So that's a measurable result coming out of this. So what are the community connectors and how does it all work, Julian?
Okay, so the community connectors are one component, and there I would
Yes.
say that that the whole model is we can broadly divide it into two sections. The first section is about what happens in the community, and the community connectors are one thing that happens, but and I will go on to explain that a little bit more. But there's also um, a mapping of the vast number of resources that take place in all the communities. There's a supporting of groups that are already there, setting up new groups, and the community connector training, which we could talk about. And then there are the health connectors. The health connectors are people who are not health professionals but work one to one with people. So, on the community side of things, you've got a program of community development. And what's happened in Frome is that that's combined with the medical practice. The
Right.
community development service sits within the medical practice.
Right. So in context, I read recently that in Britain, only 6% of people surveyed said they had a strong sense of community where they lived. And a doctor only has 10 minutes to see each patient. So it's hard to tease out if an underlying distress is caused by loneliness and isolation. And that's part of what this is all about, right?
Yeah, in fact, as human beings, we are, from the moment we're born, we develop this incredible sensitivity to the emotional state of what's happening to the other people in front of us. It's how we develop social relationships, and actually, uh, doctors are hopefully very skilled at assessing their patients and know quite quickly what's going on because they have these conversations so commonly. So actually, doctors are very well placed and know instinctively when somebody may be coming in with a bad back, but will know from the tone of voice, from from their body posture, from the way they're moving, from their facial expressions about what's going on with them. And so in that sense, they're well placed to pick up people who are feeling lonely, who are feeling isolated. And I guess that's something that can happen to anyone of any age. It can happen to school children, and it can
Yeah,
happen to
yeah.
elderly people and
So,
everyone in between.
so you wrote in your book that a rich network of face-to-face relationships creates a biological force field against disease.
Well, it does, and it's amazing, and you can look back at evolution to thank for that. It's incredible because you look at the prime hormone associated with compassion and social relationships is oxytocin, and you find oxytocin present throughout the animal kingdom. And the humans are the most social of animals, so actually, survival of the kindest is a much better term than survival of the fittest. And when you look at what happens in those moments of good compassion and social relationships, the impact is deeply profound on so many levels in human beings, and that includes impacting has a good impact on your immune system. It reduces your stress levels. Physiologically, you work much better. Your digestion works better. That you're socially you function much better, psychologically you much better, your stress levels, your stress hormones come down. Actually, it's deeply embedded in who we are as humans, and it is indeed a force field against disease.
So would I be right in saying that when we have the opportunities to express kindness in our lives, it boosts our inner sense of resilience and strength? But a community where more people are isolated, there's just less opportunity for kindness and compassion in that community because of the isolation.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's physical isolation, but there's also that sense of loneliness as well, and both of them have a negative impact on health, and so that um, there are many ways of being connected to people, and we're having one now, that we can
Yes.
connect, but also, face to face communication is good, telephone is good, so it's possible to stay connected with quality communication, but you can feel lonely even when you're surrounded with people. So it's both of these things together.
So let's come to the small town of Frome. And the two key people in your story are Dr. Helen Kingston and Jenny Hartnell. So tell us about these two amazing women.
Great. so Helen is a quiet person and a very down to earth and sensible person, but in spite of being quiet, she's an absolute powerhouse.
And she's
Full
a
of,
doctor, right?
she's a doctor,
Yeah.
and she moved from a small practice near Frome into the combined medical centre, and she just wanted to find a way of supporting people, and she absolutely knew that coming from a small practice, she knew all her patients and she knew what was going on in their lives. And she absolutely knew that medicine is so much more than just giving people a tablet, and helping people feel supported by the family, the friends and neighbors and the community. So she maintained this vision that she had, and she employed Jenny Hartnell. And Jenny Hartnell has got a background in community development. And Jenny is great because she is the world's most sensible person. You know, she's
A great British quality,
yeah,
right?
it's terrific. And if Jenny sees a problem, she sees a solution, and then she just gets on and does it. And she's also a very creative person, which meant that the combination of Jenny and Helen together was really a dynamic pair, and they just went ahead and built this whole program based on what's working and communicating and drawing people in and building teams. It's absolutely
So,
fantastic.
so my understanding, you've got three key components. You've got a community directory on the internet, you've got talking cafes, and then you've got community connectors with the training. So just take them one by one. The web directory, how many groups in Frome are in this directory of all the stuff that's going on locally?
Well, actually, when Jenny started, there were thousands, but there were too many to put on. And human beings, when they come together, we are the most social of animals. So we do all kinds of stuff together. It doesn't matter. It's whatever interests people. It might be a book club, a walking group, exercise, a knitting group, a men's shed. Doesn't matter. So the service directory, Jenny just went out and got details of all the groups that are going on in the community and put them on a very easy to use web directory, which means that anyone in the medical center can use it and anyone in the public can use it. And there's a very natural progression from there because, Jenny was working with people, and some people said, this is great. I'd love to go to that group. I'd like to go to the choir or whatever it is. And other people said, I don't want to go to any group. I just want to meet people and to chat. So now you've got the web directory and you've got the talking cafe.
How
So
does
the
a
next
talking you're going too fast. How does a talking cafe work?
is very easy. You go down, she went down to the cheese and grain and said, can I take a couple of tables up on a Monday morning? And she just put a sign up saying talking cafe and that's it. And anyone can do it, in fact. And people just wander in and chat.
So you have permission to talk to total strangers and just chatter away.
Yeah, that's it. And Jenny might put a name tag on, and then if people come, she'll introduce people, and it's just a friendly cafe. It's
Yeah.
it's what humans do. It's
And, and,
it's so straightforward.
and before we go on to the third dimension, what is a men's shed? We don't have them in Canada.
Okay, I know you do have people who love DIY.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so there's a really simple thing you can do, which is why don't the people who love DIY all meet up and build things together?
Hmm.
And the Men's Shed Association is a way that you can do that. And the key is that what do people like doing? Well, let's get together and do it together. So
So, so this is something that when COVID is past us, we can get back to this together. But for the time being, we have to do it online or whatever. And there are women's sheds as well.
well, there are because the women said, "Hey, wait a minute, I want to do that too."
So the community connectors and the training, how does that fit in?
So that's the next step because if you've got the talking cafes and you've got the service directory, well, you then go, well, why don't we train the people in the town just how to make use of the service directory, know that the talking cafes are there, know that Jenny and her team are there. So there's a training which lasts from anything between 20 minutes and 2 hours. And that can be anyone. It can be cafe owners, can be receptionists, it can be hairdressers, it can be community support officers. In fact, everyone is a community connector, and they just become activated community members. And here's the thing: we know that on average, a community connector will have a conversation 20 times per year just about things when they come across people about how the townspeople of Frome can help out the townspeople of Frome. Now, so far in Frome, there are 700 people who are trained as community connectors. That's 14,000 compassionate conversations a year in a town of 28,000 people. It is absolutely incredible. And it's amazing how face to face conversation can give you a deep dive into the community. This is how you spread by word of mouth is absolutely incredible.
But if I'm right, it's more than a sort of a compassionate conversation which someone say, well, I really understand you're hurting, but I don't know what to do. And I really understand you're hurting. And I've heard about this club over there. You might like to join. Is that the kind of thing?
Yeah, that's it. Or it may be, well, look, there may be something that you might be interested in doing, and here are some resources that you can look at yourself. And you can always, if you don't like looking on the internet, why don't you go down the Talking Cafe on a Monday morning, and you'll meet somebody down there who'll be able to help you out.
So you're applying Jenny Hartnell's common sense to that practical feeling of isolation. I don't know what to do. Like, here's what you do, go and do it, right?
So you're now trained as a community connector. It's easy, isn't it?
But 700 people out of a very small community, 28,000. I mean, that's what 2% of the whole population is now trained with these skills.
That's it. That's it.
That's impressive. And the results are showing up in the reduction in visits to the emergency in the hospital, right?
So I better give you the precise details
Yes.
because we wrote a paper about it, and we were really surprised to find these results because it wasn't the reason for doing it. But what we found was that at a time where emergency admissions have gone up by 29% in the whole of Somerset, they went down in Frome by 14%. And the significance of this wasn't lost on us because I knew that there are no interventions which have ever reduced population emergency admissions. This is like the
Wow.
golden egg. This is
Wow.
the secret of medicine because emergency admissions have been going up year on year for 2 decades, and they destroy how the hospitals function. You know, with the cancelling of routine operations
Yeah.
and
So 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 imagine I'm not a nurse or a doctor, but imagine in a hospital you've got a nice routine, you've got things planned out, but suddenly you get these emergencies come in, you've got to drop everything, right?
That's it exactly. And you find that when there are a lot of emergencies that you're moving people around the hospital and you lose continuity of patients and the teams trying to keep up with all these people who are all over the place, it doesn't make efficient working at all.
So I understand that because of the impact of all this, the whole of Wales has decided to try and embrace this policy throughout the health service in Wales. Is that correct?
Well, what we've done is two things in Wales. The first is that there are two areas which have taken up the variation, their local variation of the Frome model. They've had bits of it across Wales for some while, but those two areas invested in developing the project. But Wales has committed to become a compassionate country, and that relates a bit more to the civic component of compassionate city charter. And for your viewers, they might like to look at the Compassionate Communities UK website to get a view of the compassionate city charter. But it's
Okay,
it's about that's really about how you become a compassionate city or a
right.
compassionate country like Wales have done.
Yeah, let me raise one of the questions that's pretty hot on people's minds out here, because alongside the COVID pandemic, we've got the opioids and drug addiction going on. Do you have a similar opioid crisis in Somerset?
Uh, We don't, and I know that the opioid addiction problem is really prevalent in North America, and there are a variety of reasons for that. But when you're looking at drug addiction, actually, it's worth having a look at what are the roots of the drug addiction and social deprivation and a sense of hopelessness amongst young people. And the way that you can deal with that is through community development. It's through creating communities and giving people a sense of purpose and place. That, you know, for young people, it's very difficult facing the world now. And in particular, that the electronic media can be very depersonalizing and actually quite stressful because it doesn't just stop when you see people, it goes on up into the nighttime. And there are many reasons why young people in particular are feeling despondent, and trying to just simply get people off opioids is not the answer. You have to get to the root of it. And the root of it is contained in communities. And this is about people having a sense of belonging, knowing that they're loved and cared for by the people around them, not this sense of disenfranchisement.
Yeah, I mean, in our hunter-gatherer ancestry, we were living in clans of 50 people, and everyone knew everyone, for better and for worse. I mean, but you know those people know about you and care about you, and now people can live, especially in Canada, we have people coming out of care, teenagers who are 18, they're suddenly on the streets with no family, and it's isolation city. It's cruel. So, Julian, one of the techniques that might be used for people feeling real isolation is what you call motivational interviewing. What is that?
So the key to that is asking about what matters most to you. And actually, if you're going to try and solve these problems, then you need to find out what is the biggest issue for people. And it might be homelessness, in which case putting them in contact with places where they can solve their problems of homelessness. Or it might be that people are just feeling isolated and lonely. And then there's a bit about, well, okay, what is it you like to do? What is it that interests you? Are there things going on in the community that would be helpful? And if there isn't, what about starting a group that might attract people who have similar interests? Because in a way, it's the love, laughter, and friendship that happens along the way that makes the biggest difference. And that's where the community development comes in. So your health connectors are trained in motivational interviewing, but they're also community development workers.
So those three words, love, laughter, and friendship, I mean, we take them for granted, but they are so delightful. But if you're missing out on them, it's a recipe for depression and despair, isn't it?
Well, I mean, my clinical life was as a palliative care physician, and I asked thousands of people about what mattered to them, what was the most important things in their lives, and it is always love, laughter, and friendship. It's the people we know and love and the places we know and love. And I never once ever had anyone say to me, "I wish I'd spent more time at work." And and if you think about it, the thing that gives value and meaning to life are people. It's our relationships with people and relationships with place. And there's a fantastic study that began in 1938 in Harvard, in which they tracked people over every year, and tracked them throughout their whole lives,
Yeah.
and asked them how. And the results are clear. If you want to live a happy, healthy, long life, it's all about relationships. It's the secret that is in front of our faces.
Well, it's interesting because the America's Constitution puts the pursuit of liberty and happiness as a goal. I have experienced that you can never find happiness by seeking it. But if you immerse yourself in helping other people, happiness will be like a bird that comes and sits on your shoulder.
Well, that's exactly right. Yeah.
And so what I'm getting is that through this community connectedness, the more people relate with each other and doing stuff together, having fun together, the more they'll find spontaneous opportunities to help each other and discover they're happy.
So, like I said, you were trained as a community connector already. I think actually it's a fair point, because what we're doing is we're making the obvious simple and easy to join in.
Yeah.
This is something that is deeply embedded in our human nature, and we're just connecting with that.
Yeah. So as a doctor, you talk about social prescribing as opposed to take these 6 pills and come back in 2 weeks or come back on a phone call in 6 weeks. What is social prescribing?
Yeah, I struggle with that phrase actually. I like and
Okay.
and the reason is that that it's got that sense of taking some kind of a magic pill to solve your social life, and it's a little bit patronizing. And I
Okay.
think the term compassionate communities expresses it in a much better way. And that's about how do you connect people and how do you build these compassionate communities.
Yeah. So how much time have you spent you're living down in Cornwall, but how often do you go back to Frome?
So now, not often.
Yeah.
That
Well,
we
we're all in lockdown. Yes, understood.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, so that we worked together in rolling out the project across Mendip, and I was living close to Frome when we were doing that, and we also worked together about going up to Wales and doing the project there, and so we
So,
remained in close contact,
okay.
and we also do it via
Yeah.
Zoom and Skype and stuff.
What I'm looking for is, do you have any anecdotal or sense of the change in the quality of relationships on the streets with people, that being a compassionate community, people are saying that it's making a difference in their lives?
I mean, Frome is known as a friendly town. You can imagine that you might have a cafe or a shop and somebody's trained as a community connector, and they're chatty and they're listening out. And so if you're talking about what's going on, they're going to look to help you out. What's happened is Frome now has a reputation of being a friendly town, and people are moving to Frome because it is so friendly.
And also, you have a little secret called flat pack democracy. I know
Ah,
we got 1.5 minutes left, but the
okay.
politics of this are quite important, right?
So they played an important role, and Frome Town Council has been independent for two election cycles, and what's happened is that the councillors have worked out how to work together. After all, we're human beings and we can work together. They don't belong to a political party, and they have worked out a way of working in which they listen to the people of the town. Now, if you want to hear more about that, I've got a podcast called Survival of the Kindest.
Okay.
Mayor Sheila Gore describes brilliantly what proper democracy looks like.
So anyone can Google on either Flat Pack Democracy or your podcast, Survival of the Kindest, right?
That's it. It's on the Compassionate Communities UK website.
And as I understand it, compassionate communities is quite a movement in Britain that other communities are getting interested in embracing bits of.
Yeah, worldwide.
Worldwide.
Yeah. And we started an international association some years ago, and Public Health Country International, and there's worldwide interest in it, particularly
so look, our time's run out, Julian. So viewers, if you Google on the phrase compassionate communities, you'll get a whole bunch of stuff. So Julian, thank you so much. Thank you for your work as a doctor, your work in spreading kindness, your work in spreading compassion, your practical, sensible work in helping, make this happen, and for the book you wrote, which is called The Compassion Project: A Case for Hope and Human Kindness in the Town That Built Loneliness. It's in local bookshops here on Vancouver Island, because that's where I got it myself. And thank you for sharing this time with us.
It's a pleasure, and thank you so much for taking me.
Thanks, Julian. So my name's Guy Daunce. This has been the show Change the World. Tune in next week for another scintillating guest and more positive visions for a better future.